say something brilliant, she'll get her name in there too.
Oh.
All right.
No, I only get
We're
my
back.
name in when I say something dumb.
Yeah, well, we're back alive, and we have Senator Brian Campion, Chair of Senate Education, excuse me. And they have provided us, and it's on our webpage, a rewrite of Section 6, and which is the Intercollegiate Sexual Prevention Council. So Senator Campion, you want to go through, I'm assuming
Sure.
the Educational Committee will be offering the amendment on the floor.
Thanks, Senator Sears. Yes, and thanks for having me. And I'm glad Michelle Childs is here. What I would just like to say, and then I'll stick around, I'd like Michelle to walk through it and then take questions as she goes through it. But the short of it is, yes, we will. We did hear from the University of Vermont, the state colleges, Sexual Violence Task Force. We also had written testimony submitted. And we feel as though we're hoping, and we hope this committee agrees, that this would be put into H-183. We did make some changes. Senators, in particular, Lyons, Pershlik, and Hooker took the lead on this and really worked and made some edits and some more, I don't know if I'd say significant changes, but some additional changes that Ms. Childs can walk you through. And I thought as we go through it, I'll be here to address any questions that might come up with the language. How does that feel to you?
Sounds good. I see we have 4 different colors.
Yeah, I thought that was very helpful. It was great. And so you have, I don't know if it matches the senator's recommendations, if that's still on there, but Lyons is in yellow, Perchlik. Okay, good. So
Perchlik is blue, Hooker's pink, and UVM is green.
Is green. So
probably it I think
green and gold.
It should have been catamount.
Right. So if yeah, I'm happy to stick around and again,
Michelle, why don't you, thank you, Senator Campion. Michelle, why don't you walk us through that?
Sure, and so you have a clean version and then you have that marked up. Is your preference for me to show you the marked up copy?
Yeah, I'd like to see the marked up so we can see, are these the marked ones, like using the term Harm Prevention Council? That's a change from the House version, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that helps.
Yeah, Senator Sears, we worked from the House version.
Right.
That was
so these are changes from the House version.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
What version is this, please?
3.1.
2.1 is the clean version that they voted. I'm just showing you their markup process because senators wanted to kind of see that.
Yes, very good.
That's helpful. So starting with the term harm.
Sure. So we're looking at draft 2.1 with the little coding, color coding. So you'll see change it previously said Sexual Violence Prevention Council, and the members prefer to use the word harm because it's a little broader. And when you're talking about the issues that are involved here around campus sexual harm, it involves harassment and other issues, not just violence. And so I think in looking at it, it is a more appropriate term based on the recommendations of the task force, which was to have this council. Subsection A, that's just a little technical thing, so nothing substantive there. The next change, so you'll see the section on subdivision 1 is the members of the council. And the next change is at the top of page 3, adding a new subdivision 2 at the suggestion of Senator Hooker, that to ensure a council that is reflective of Vermont's college campuses, appointing authority shall consider diversity when making appointments to the council. So that's just kind of an aspirational statement. Some folks are going to be more tied into having to pick a specific person because of the type of appointment it is. So like the Title IX coordinator, something like that, it's going to be who it is, but it's to encourage diversity on the council.
Great.
So subsection C on duties, this is just reworked a little bit. The first one added, I think there was strong support for this, and Senator Lyons suggested it, is that the first thing that they do is to review the recommendations from the task force report and develop prevention solutions to sexual harm based on those recommendations. So Senator Perchlik had specifically really dug in and read the whole report and was looking at it and was interested in kind of looking at in deeper at some of those recommendations. And so what they wanted to have the council do is to follow up on some of those. The next change is on subdivision 4, and this is the language that I think Wendy Koenig submitted from UVM as a recommendation, and I think this committee saw it. I think Jeanette was the one who actually forwarded it to me, and so that is the exact language that UVM had proposed, and it's just tweaking semantics, very, in my opinion, very minor, but they felt more comfortable around that. Around sharing effective practices as opposed to best practices. The next change is the top of page 4, subdivision 5. Senator Lyons, identify campus-wide activities, publications, and services that promote a campus culture of respect to support in the prevention of sexual violence. And, you know, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking I should probably change that word to harm.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then the next one is something that was a specific recommendation of the task force, and Senator Perchlik had recommended that this kind of be highlighted for the council to report back at the end of this year, so that the legislature could, if it chose to take action on this particular thing. Remember, the council is only authorized to meet 4 times a year.
Right.
And so there's a lot of things that they would be looking at, but this one is to recommend statutory protections by November 1st to ensure that survivors of sexual harm.
Sounds similar to the Good Sam that we just passed on.
1820. Exactly. Same exact concept is that if someone
This would
assaulted-
be for the universities, right? That they wouldn't be able to, or is it for crimes?
I'm not sure.
Could the University of Vermont, for example, punish somebody who reported something?
right.
But them, I understand that under this, it would not, maybe that's something that should be in that study. Should the university also protect from consequences or whatever?
Right. Well, let me look at the underlying task force report. My guess is that it's talking about any kind of repercussions, whether that be,
Yeah.
uh,
Well, we've got plenty of time because this bill's still in appropriations, need to be voted out hopefully today. But so, it doesn't need to be done right now.
so I'll follow up on that. Kind of related to that subdivision 6 is, so the House version had the network calling the first meeting no later than September 15th of this year.
Right.
But if you are requiring them to report to you by November 1st, then that really arguably only allows them to have one meeting prior to that. So probably, it's their first meeting, setting their agendas and figuring that out. And so they thought that if you have them meet for the first time, at least in the summer, then you can squeeze in a second meeting in the fall to ensure that they have adequate time to be able to recommend some suggestions on subdivision 6.
Okay.
And then effective date has those sections, has the establishment of the council and the appropriation for the staffing take effect on passage. And then the rest would continue to take effect on July 1st. Something I do want to mention, and Senator Sears mentioned, and I have to look at it, is that I think I made an error. So the House bill has a 7-year sunset because that's typically what they do for any kind of council or board that's established. And so that would have been 2028. And I think I unintentionally, while working on something for someone else related to this, in 2025. So, and I didn't highlight that or discuss that with Senate Ed. And so that is 3 years shorter. So it would have a 4-year sunset instead of a 7-year sunset. So my apologies for that.
Can I just clarify there?
Yeah.
Senator Campion?
Mhm.
So did you all discuss changing the sunset?
We did not discuss changing the sunset.
Could you do that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Could I also comment on that? All the boards and commissions, now all the boards and commissions, and I realize this is a task force or something else, but all the boards and commissions that we set up now have a 5-year sunset unless they're just as reports do.
I personally would favor 2025.
Yeah, I like.
think it's sort of like RDAP. We came back and looked at it and said, yes, we should continue it, but at least it forces, you know, hopefully some of you will still be here in 2025.
No, I
I'm
like
happy
that
to-
change as well. I would just like Senate Ed to.
Yeah, we're happy to take another look at that this afternoon.
The only
Confirm.
The only question I have, Michelle, is if you can make the appropriation effective on passage when if the bill were to pass before the budget, you need to check with Stephanie on that one.
Okay.
Because I am assuming it's in the House budget, it's not in the Senate budget at this point. And
Okay.
if we made it effective on passage, I don't know if that's a problem or if it's nothing.
I mean, it's for FY22, so the money wouldn't be happening until July 1st anyway. So
Right.
I'm happy to put that as July 1st.
Well, I think you probably check with Stephanie, please. I don't know.
Okay.
Michelle, could you scroll up to the UVM language?
Yep.
Yeah, right there.
Mhm.
So this uses the term tertiary violence. I am familiar with tertiary prevention, primary, secondary, tertiary prevention. And I'm wondering if that's a reference to prevention, because unless there's a discussion of sexual violence in primary, secondary, and tertiary forms. So I'm just flagging that I've never heard tertiary violence, but I've often heard tertiary prevention. So
I believe that language has been in there since introduction, and it hasn't really gotten any discussion until then about that particular term. So
We can flag that also if you want us to look at.
that would be great.
Yep.
I don't know whether Sarah might be able to address that, because some of this language, came from the network.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the UVM language is just on the identify and share the effective practices.
Okay.
They just made a couple small changes to that paragraph.
Either way, it's and I also don't understand if it is tertiary violence as opposed to a mix up with tertiary prevention, why tertiary and not secondary as well. So it's referencing a 3-part classification scheme, which I've seen used for prevention efforts, with tertiary being long-term prevention. So I just feel like we need clarification about violence versus prevention there, and why only tertiary. I guess.
We can have Sarah Robinson into committee this afternoon
Okay.
and have a conversation with her and then come back to all of you.
That'd be great.
I actually, I really appreciate Senator Ed's work on this. I think he did a terrific job. And
So
Senator Campion, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
I agree. I think, it addresses several of my concerns. I think there's just a couple of technical questions outstanding.
can I just ask a question on the tertiary violence? So is that expanding it to all kinds of violence on campus or just related to sexual violence? Looks like it could add in every kind of violence on campus.
I'm sorry, I've stopped. I'm going to stop my screen. So Sarah's
Yeah.
here. Do you
I'm just one,
might be able to address that? Because that term of art was not something that I selected.
so did it come from education?
No, it was in the House version, and Senator Nicola, we're going to have Sarah Robinson from the network in this afternoon to.
She's here, actually.
Oh, she is. Oh,
Yeah.
terrific.
Yeah, maybe it'd be a good time to open this up to witnesses for the next few minutes.
Okay.
Who might want to comment. Sarah, I'm only commenting on the changes from Senate Education, not that we've already voted out the bill. Sarah, go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you all. Sarah Robinson, Deputy Director at the Vermont Network Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. Thanks very much to the committee for being willing to reconsider this section and for the good work of the Senate Education Committee, who had some really excellent conversations about this. So I can speak to specifically that section 4 or subsection 4. I think that the concerns may be allayed by simply reflecting the language of sexual harm in that section. So saying sexual health education strategies for mitigating sexual harm and tertiary sexual harm on college campuses in Vermont, or tertiary harm just generally. So the idea is to limit the amount of harm that happens after the incident or violence occurs. And so that could be retaliation from somebody who has harmed them. It could also be institutional harm or harm that people experience while going through the process of reporting. So I think that
Sarah,
yes.
if I could just ask, so tertiary is third stage, and primary, I understand, but what is the secondary then in that scheme?
So secondary prevention would be following.
Well, no, I think there's a confusion between violence and prevention. So here it's the primary violence, I understand. And then I know you're talking about a follow-on violence, but that seems like a two-part thing. Whereas prevention, I've always heard talked about in primary, secondary, tertiary. So I'm wondering if there's a confusion here between violence and prevention in the use of tertiary.
I think you could easily use secondary violence on college campuses in Vermont there. I don't think it would change the meaning of that. And I think that would make sense.
Okay.
So you could replace the word tertiary with secondary. And I think that would be fine.
Great.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions about this? Is that something that Senator Ed can look at this afternoon?
Absolutely. We can, Ms. Robinson, if you're available to come into Senate Ed, but I don't know how much we'll actually need you, but just on standby, and we'll have Ms. Childs can come in. I'm thinking 15 or 20 minutes just to talk about that and review the sunset to make sure everybody's on the same page. That would be great.
Happy to be available if the committee needs me.
Great.
Rebecca Turner or Matt Valerio, do you have any comments on this section?
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you, Senator Sears. For the record, Rebecca Turner, head of the Appellate Division of the Office of the Defender General. I wanted to just focus on one piece of this and appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. I don't believe I've spoken to this committee about our thoughts about this when it first was introduced in House Judiciary. There I shared concerns relating to the membership of the council, and I'm happy to see that the most recent changes, of course, include a seat at the table by someone designated by the Defender General, and that was a request, and I appreciate that. And I wanted to bring the committee's attention to page 3, lines 1, 2, 3, the new proposed language, highlighting the aspirational goal that the membership be diverse reflecting Vermont college campuses. And I wanted to share that I'm happy to see this language. This is in line with my earlier expressed concerns, not just that the Defender General's perspective wasn't included in the original drafting, and now it is, but where that concern really lied was just having more diverse perspectives and making sure that those voices were heard on this council as well. And I shared earlier before House Judiciary that we know anecdotally that Black and brown boys and men are disproportionately accused of these offenses. And I wanted to ensure that those perspectives are brought to this forum as well. And so I appreciate lines 1, 2, and 3, recognizing that diversity. I worry, however, that while Michelle Childs framed it as an aspirational goal, the current makeup of the membership as described in page 2 really prevents that perspective of a college student or others from the community representing, students who stand accused from having their voices heard. I understand that the Defender General's appointee provides an aspect of that, but that is a much more specific and specialized perspective working within the criminal justice system, and certainly not standing in for the voices or perspectives of the students themselves. So I wanted to bring that to the table, that while this is great, there really isn't a way to actually achieve that diversity on this panel as currently set up. I would recommend considering expanding the number of college students who are can be on this council. Right now it's just 2, and of the 2, I don't see an assurance that diversity of perspectives from the college students' perspectives are captured there. The second point on this was I was sitting on the term diversity, and I think that it isn't clear what that means in this context, what's intended. Certainly I could throw in my 2 cents of what I think, right? Age, gender, race, ethnicity. Is the intent to include those pieces of diversity, gender identity, household income? Is it that we want to ensure there's representation from both public and private schools, student body? Is it the non-traditional student perspective diversity? So I thought that it could warrant, particularly where there is such, so important to capture these voices in this area. So those are my comments for the new changes here this morning.
Thank you. I don't know how to put this delicately, but it would be helpful to have somebody that's been falsely accused.
It would be.
I don't know how you write that in as a college student. Maybe because that's the show I was watching about the teenagers that were convicted of sexual assault and gang rape, in Central Park. It's a Netflix. Can't think of the name of it. But anyway, I don't know if there's a way to express that voice too. Because,
If I could just speak to that,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. So I sat on the Sexual Violence Prevention Task Force a couple of years ago, and I'll just be blunt, we were sort of hamstrung because the membership of that group was set up to be oppositional. And it was set up to have, for every person who was arguing about what I considered a positive change in the system, there was somebody in the oppositional chair. And ultimately, we literally, our report on the most important aspect of it, we almost deadlocked. And so I would be very hesitant to add somebody, or to try to add somebody who has, or who claims to have been falsely accused, because it seems what it would start is a conversation about whether this actually exists, or whether the problem is false accusation rather than sexual violence on college campuses. So I was glad to see the makeup of this panel be composed very much primarily of people who agree that there's a problem and are working on it. Title IX coordinators, I think, all agree that there's a problem and they're working on it. So having or trying to write in that representation would include false accusation seems to me to start that discussion about is there actually a problem, or is the problem one we're creating by falsely accusing people? Just
I don't know.
my opinion on that.
My experience in this chair tells me that a lot of people have been falsely accused of crimes that have been sent afterwards exonerated. And many of them are persons of color. But yeah, I don't disagree with you that it might make that all more difficult, but I don't think there's anything wrong with at least asking for a third student.
Oh, no, I think increasing the number of students would be fine.
Can I ask you, though, so right now, you have on the student piece, on subdivision F, 2 college students, at least one of whom has lived experience as a sexual violence survivor, and one who represents a campus-based racial justice organization. So if you wanted to add an additional student, I mean, do you just want to say three and then specify the 2?
Yeah, my suggestion to the education committee is to have 3 students, 2 of whom are defined and 1 of whom could be any member of the college community.
Okay, got it.
As long as they're a full-time student.
Sure.
So could I just comment on Senator Bruce's comment? I can see that you don't want to set up the committee to be deadlocked, but I do think you need to hear from those voices. I just think that we often do things well-meaning, but not listening to voices that have a different perspective or a different experience. And I think it's absolutely important that those voices be heard.
Well, we do have the Defender General represented now.
I realize that, but I think, as Rebecca pointed out, that that's very different than having somebody who's lived it.
Because we need to get to the floor at 10.
Sorry.
I appreciate the conversation, and I take it that it's the sense of the committee that when the amendment is presented by the Senate Education Committee, that we would support that amendment.
Yeah.
And Senator Sears, we'll review this afternoon with Ms. Childs and others, those 3 areas that you just pointed out. And then, which I think Senator Ed will be comfortable with, adding a student, the sunset, and then going over the change to tertiary.
Yeah, I don't, that's more, that came from UVM, so you may want to see.
No, the tertiary didn't.
I thought
That came
that's
from
got the
network.
green on it, huh?
I know, but they
Yep.
had made a couple comments at the very
Oh,
beginning.
okay.
It was in the House
Right.
bill.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for a great week.